Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, APW Sports. It is fast here. We have reached the midway point of the 2024 NFL season, and today we're going to give our mid-season takes on each NFL team. Now, granted, we're going to spend more time on some teams than others, but that's just how it is going to go. That's just how things go. But it's crazy that we're already at the midway point. Time has moved by fast, but either way it goes, time to get into our mid-season thoughts. Without further ado, let's dive into it. Alright, first we're going to start with the AFC East, and we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills, who sit at 7-2. A lot of people thought the loss of Stephon Diggs, the loss of Gabe Davis, and the loss of all those other pieces Poyer had would have this team kind of sitting midway through the pack, especially having Josh Allen carry the team. But it has worked. Josh Allen has not necessarily had to carry this team because they've been running the football a lot better with James Cook. Offensive line still solid. Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman is really starting to emerge as a productivity wide receiver in his rookie season. Defensively, Ed Oliver is leading the charge up the middle, and they've still dealt with injuries, whether it's been Manalo or anybody else. Von Miller has been dealing with issues, suspension, but this team has still been productive, sitting at 7-2. And a lot of people thought they were going to take a fall back, whether it was the loss of Diggs, Gabe Davis, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White. A lot of people thought this Buffalo Bills team was going to take a step back, but that just hasn't happened. Josh Allen is right there in the MVP conversation, if not the MVP, been playing some consistent football, not turning the ball over at a high level, and I think that has carried over to this football team. And Sean McDermott has proved themselves as one of the better coaches that we have in the NFL. Next, we're going to go to the dumpster fire. Well, not necessarily dumpster fire, but the disaster that has been the New York Jets. The New York Jets is coming to this season with a lot of high expectations. Aaron Rodgers just hasn't been playing well. Sometimes they refuse to run the football effectively with Hall and with Braylon Allen. The wide receiver position, Lazard has been hurt. Mike Williams, they just traded to the Steelers. They acquired Devontae Adams earlier, like a week or two ago. But defensively, they have been kind of suspect, even though Quentin Williams has been solid. Sauce Gardner, I think, is a holding champion. DJ Reed has been out with injuries. Michael Carter has been out with injuries. CJ Mosley even missed time with injuries. And then the offensive line has been kind of so-so, if we want to be honest. This Jets team has just not been what we all expected this Jets team to be, which is Super Bowl contender. They have not lived up so. Now they do get Hassan Reddick back off the holdout, and he played better, and they got 7 sacks against the Texans. But this Jets team, I don't think they're necessarily typically over just yet, but it's looking like it. And Aaron Rodgers last week did play his best game, but so far this season, they've already followed Robert Saleh. They have just so much going on within that locker room, which I said in the video earlier. I think this is more of a roster and not a team. Coming off a win last week, we'll see how the rest of their season goes. Now, the Miami Dolphins sitting at 2-6. No one had expected that, but then again, no one expected Tua to be out for so much time. Nobody expected that defense to not play so well. And Huntley and Skylar Thompson subbing in for Tua during it with concussion issues just didn't live out. Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle, they just have not been receiving targets because of that. And we learned about this Miami Dolphins team. They're going to go as far as Tua is able to stay healthy and Tua is able to play well. This Miami Dolphins team is just fell short of what we thought they could be, sitting here at 2-6 as we hit the midway point of the season. Nowhere near where we thought they would be. I just hate the fact that Tua has had to deal with the concussions. I think this would be a better team if he didn't have those issues. Now I'm going to move on to the New England Patriots. They're kind of where a lot of people thought we would be, and honestly, I thought they would be here. But I always said this season should be nothing for the New England Patriots but developing Drake May. That is the biggest thing, and from what I've seen of Drake May so far, he has the potential to be one of the star quarterbacks in this league. It's just going to take some time, which I think the Patriots are okay with. Defensively, not really the best unit. which is fine because they're in a rebuilding stage. All about Drake May. And once this team starts to get the weapons in the future, once this team starts to build more through the draft, I think then they'll start to be a better football team. But at the end of the day, I think they are on the right track with the drafting of Drake May. Now we're going to go to the NFC East and the Washington Commanders. They have been the absolute biggest surprise that we have so far. No one expected the Washington Commanders to be a 7-2 football team. Jaden Daniels is playing like he could be a potential MVP candidate the way he's playing. Definitely Offensive Rookie of the Year, and I think this is not even a close race so far. Then you're talking about Brian Robinson, who has been running the football very well with a solid offensive line. Then you had Terry McLaurin from The Ohio State University. Emerged as one of the better receivers in his offense, still getting the football. And the things that Jaden Daniels has been doing with his legs. And shout out to Cliff Kingsbury, who has his offense clicking. And they only have 3 turnovers at this point in the season. And then Dan Quinn with that defense with Bobby Wagner. They just acquired Marshawn Lattimore to help add to that secondary. They had Jonathan Allen, even though he is missing the rest of the year with a peg. Deron Payne. This team, biggest surprise that we have in the NFL, and I think it's not even close. No one expected this Commanders team to be where they are, sitting at 7-2, atop of the NFC East division and atop of one of the better teams record-wise in the NFC. Shout out to Dan Quinn, who I think is a potential Coach of the Year candidate, the way he was able to turn around this Commanders team just like that. But now we're going into the Philadelphia Eagles sitting at 6-2, and they had some moments where they didn't look good on the defensive side of the ball. I still don't think this Philadelphia Eagles defense is world beaters, but they have improved, I think, game by game. And I think the acquisition of Saquon Barkley to add to Jalen Hurts, Brown, Smith in this offense, I think has paid big dividends to what the Eagles like to do. They like to be physical. They like to run the football, set up Jalen Hurts in the passing game off of the running game. And when Saquon Barkley is healthy and in the lineup, this is a different Philadelphia Eagles offense versus when he's not in the lineup. And we're starting to see that more and more. Even though I'm still not a big fan of this Eagles defense, they have been playing better. Sirianni has had his question marks as a head coach, but I think right now we're starting to see the Eagles starting to pick up their play, especially defensively. I just think if offensively they can continue to run the football behind that good offensive line, I think the Eagles can go places for the rest of the season. Now we're talking about the biggest disaster I think in the NFL. And we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys, who had big expectations of Super Bowl. The problem with this Dallas Cowboys team is what they did in the offseason, or lack of what they did in the offseason. I did a video about them. I'll leave them in the card, so I won't spend too much time. They can't run the football. They can't stop the run. Outside of CeeDee Lamb, you don't really have big weapons, even though they just acquired Jonathan Mingo. Brandon Cooks is injured, and this team just doesn't have the running game. And on top of that, Dak Prescott is scheduled to miss the next 4 weeks with that hamstring injury. And then on top of that, CeeDee Lamb still questionable with that AC joint in his shoulder. Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence missed time. Deron Bland has missed time. Not only is this team not very good coach-wise, this team doesn't have a ton of talent to help fix some of the woes that they had last year. And then on top of that, they had the injury bug. It's not a very good football team right now, and it's only getting worse, I think, for the Cowboys the rest of the season. Now we're talking about the New York Giants. I mean, the Giants are the Giants. If you guys have watched me on this channel, I've never been a big believer in Daniel Jones. It's starting to show. The loss of Saquon Barkley hurts. Malik Neighbors has been the absolute bright spot for this New York Giants football team. And we're talking about a Giants football team defensively. I think if they had a compatible offense, they would be, I think, a little bit of a better team if the offense was compatible and consistently moved the football. This season has proved that Daniel Jones is not it, and they really need to move on from him. And Brian Daboll is on a hot seat. I mean, only a little bit. I think he's not the problem with the hot seat. I mean, not the problem, but it's like you kept Daniel Jones around. You expected him to work a miracle with him, and I always said Daniel Jones is not it. It's time for them to go in a new direction, a new quarterback heading into next year. Now we're going to talk about the AFC North, and we're going to talk about the division-leading Pittsburgh Steelers, who sit at 6-2. It was the whole Russell Wilson, Justin Fields debate, and Justin Fields had this team 4-2 when Mike Tomlin ultimately made the move to go back to Russell Wilson. And we're looking like idiots for questioning that, because so far, it's looked like the very right move for the Pittsburgh Steelers to go to Russell Wilson as the starting quarterback. It seems like this offense is elevated a little bit more. It seems like they're pushing the ball down the field a little bit more. And it seems like they're getting their weapons involved. And they have been running the football more effectively with Russell Wilson, with Najee Harris having 3 straight 100-yard games heading into their bye week. And defensively, this team has been absolutely stout when you talk about Cam Herbert from The Ohio State University. So is Justin Fields from The Ohio State University. You had T.J. Watt. You have Alex Highsmith. You have Minka Fitzpatrick that is flying around making plays for this defense. Bishop has been a really good player for them. This defense has been absolutely lethal all season, getting after the quarterback. And they have 2 guys that can close as Watt and Highsmith. And they just acquired Preston Smith to add more depth to their defensive front. Offensive line has been playing better over the last couple of weeks. And then on top of that, they add Mike Williams to the wide receiving core during the trade deadline. Could this Steelers success continue? I think it's going to be the biggest question for them going into the rest of the season. But I love what they've done defensively. And it's looked like the right move to go back to Russell Wilson for the rest of the season. Then we're going to talk about the Baltimore Ravens, who are one of the more complete teams in football. I still think they have a bit of an issue secondary-wise, but they did acquire Tre'Davious White at the trade deadline to help with that. Roquan Smith has been flying all around the football field for this defense. I really like what they've been doing offensively with the 1-2 punch of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry was the missing piece that the Ravens needed all along to elevate themselves into that Super Bowl spot. Lamar Jackson has been playing at an MVP level. Zay Flowers has been looking like a really good threat for them. They did just acquire Deontay Johnson. They have Rashad Bateman. And Isaiah Glockley and Mark Andrews starting to look like the best tight end duo that we have in the NFL. But the one thing that I don't want the Ravens to do is get cute and try to throw the ball so much. Stick to your core. You have a closing running back in Derrick Henry and run the football. And like I said, he was the missing piece, I think, to make this Ravens a complete football team. A guy that you can run the clock with and close games because you're playing with a bit of a lead. Still have some questions on the defensive side of the ball. But as long as you have Derrick Henry and the ability to run the football and eat the time of possession, I think you're going to have a chance to win every single game that you're in. Then we're going to go to the Cincinnati Bengals at 4-5. And the Bengals, honestly, it started off so slow every single year. And I had made a panic video as, do we panic again? Because it just didn't look like it did in most years where they started slow. Defensively, they have not looked good outside of Trey Hendrickson. Offensively, they're starting to pick it up now. Burrow, Chase, and they did just acquire Khalil Herbert to add to the running game with Zach Moss out with the neck injury. And I've known Khalil Herbert, watching him as a Bears fan. He is a very physical runner. I think he's going to add to the Cincinnati Bengals attack. And as long as they can put some solid play defensively in the way this offense is playing and the way Joe Burrow can play at this higher level, I think they're going to be just as any game as they would the Baltimore Ravens. So I think the Cincinnati Bengals are starting to get hot at the right time. And it's interesting to see how this team is going to carry that momentum down the road, but it got off to a sluggish start. And then we're talking about the Cleveland Browns. I don't want to spend too much time on this team. Deshaun Watson didn't look like himself. That defense has basically regressed a ton. They just traded Zadarius Smith to the Lions, and they traded Amari Cooper to the Bills. They just don't have it. Kevin Stefanski is dealt with a lot, and they're stuck with that Deshaun Watson contract, which absolutely sucks. This Browns team is going nowhere fast. And even Myles Garrett, as good as he is, cannot save this football team. And Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who I love to watch play and fly around the field, they cannot save this team. They just cannot do it. Now we're going to talk about the NFC North and the Detroit Lions, who I think is the best team in the NFL. They have the things on defense, whether it's Carlton Davis, whether it's Aiden Hutchinson before the injury. They just acquired Zadarius Smith to help. They have, I think, the best offense in the league with Gibbs, Montgomery. Jared Goff is playing at an MVP level. Amon-Ra St. Brown is emerging even more as a top receiver in the NFL. And they have one of the top tier offensive lines with Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker from The Ohio State University. Manning the tackle positions, the way that Ben Johnson is calling his offense and the way that Dan Campbell is leading his football team, my Super Bowl pick of them is starting to look damn good right now, the way that this Lions team has been playing. And they've only been playing better and better as of late. And this Lions team is going to be very scary. And this is a Lions team that had a lead in the NFC Championship game, but only did things to make themselves a better football team this year. Best football team in the league, and I'm not even going to stay away from that. I really believe the Lions are the best, despite the Chiefs being undefeated. Now we're going to go to the Minnesota Vikings, another surprise that we have in the NFL. Sam Darnold looked like an MVP candidate early on in the year. Defensively, the Minnesota Vikings have been getting after the quarterback. They had some moments where Sam Darnold can turn the football over, and that was shown against the Indianapolis Colts. Aaron Jones has been a big addition. Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, good receivers, and they add TJ Hockenson back off of injury this past week. I'm really liking where this Minnesota team is going. Shout out to Kevin O'Connell, who I think could be in the nomination for Coach of the Year as well. And Brian Flores has done some very good things with this defense. I just want to see, can Sam Darnold continue this consistent play throughout the rest of the year? And I think that's going to be something we all are going to look for. And can this defense continue to be aggressive and teams not expose them as they were in their 2 losses to the Rams and to the Detroit Lions? Then we have the Green Bay Packers, who I think is one of the more head-scratching teams. Even though they sit at 6-3, defensively they've had their woes. Offensively, Jordan Love has been in and out of the lineup with injuries. And when Jordan Love, I think, is behind, he turns into Josh Allen with some of those crazy turnovers. He done it against the Rams. He did it last week against the Lions with those pick sixes, trying to panic instead of just taking a sack and just living to play another down. They do have that. Josh Jacobs, I thought he was overrated, but he's been a surprise as in what he's been bringing to this football team. Defensively, I'm still not the biggest fan of this Packers team on the defensive side of the ball, despite the fact that they do create turnovers with McKinney and Alexander in their secondary. I just don't like the fact that they don't get after the quarterback as much as they would need to. And then on top of that, offensively, they still don't have a true number 1 go-to wide receiver at this point. Jordan Love is going to need that down the stretch, and I think the Packers right now just don't have it. Then we're going to get into my Chicago Bears, sitting at 4-4, but we've looked worse than our 4-4 record, especially the last 2 weeks, mainly on the offensive side of the ball. We start so slow every game. The Bears offensively has been a hit or miss. We've been beating up on bad teams offensively. When we play the good teams, we just don't play very well. And yes, I'm saying we because I'm a Bears fan. Defensively, I want to say, especially last week against Arizona, we had spots against Washington where we just didn't look good. We haven't created turnovers, especially at a consistent rate for us to win ball games. And we're talking about a Chicago Bears offense that has so much coming in. Shane Waldron just hasn't lived up to what people thought he was going to be, and it was the reason why Seattle let him go. Matt Eberflus's hot seat is just even hotter right now, especially the way they looked these past 2 weeks. And they didn't make any moves at the trade deadline, instead of trading Khalil Herbert, which I think was fine, because this team, at the end of the day, is 4-4, and they kind of thought we were going to be that way. It's just how it's looked. It's just not conducive to consistent winning. And at the end of the day, I personally think Eberflus and Shane Waldron are probably going to be gone at season's end, especially the way this offense has looked all season long, basically. So the Bears, I don't think are in a good spot right now, and especially with some of the injuries starting to pile up, it's not looking like a good football team right now, but they have a chance to change that. Today's video is brought to you by ExpressVPN. For me, it is very important to have a VPN to protect my online privacy. It'd be very, very creepy if there was someone out there who kept a log of every single thing that you did online. So why let your internet provider really do that to you online? The best thing to do is to get yourself a VPN, and why not go with the ExpressVPN, the best VPN available. Personally, I like it for the fact that you can unlock Netflix shows that you do not get in the US market. Now, one show that I've started to get myself into is Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You search Brooklyn Nine-Nine in the US, doesn't come up, but you can switch your location to Canada, and you can research Brooklyn Nine-Nine again, and bam, it pops up right then and there, and you can catch up on your episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Now, if you click the link in the description below, you will get 3 free months of ExpressVPN. Just by clicking the link below and you sign up today, you will get 3 months free of ExpressVPN. All you have to do is click the link down below and you will get ExpressVPN. Now, let's just get back to the video. The AFC South and the Houston Texans. One thing about the Houston Texans that is glaring obvious, the interior of their offensive line is god-awful. They have two very good tackles led by Laramie Thompson on their left side. They can run the football with Joe Mixon. And injuries are mounting. Stephon Diggs being out. Miko Collins still on IR. We're not sure when he's going to be back. Defensively, they've looked solid with Will Anderson Jr., Derek Stingley. I still think this Texans defense is solid. It's just the interior of the offensive line is so bad. It has cost them games, and it definitely cost them a game against the Packers, and it cost them a game against the Jets. They have to shore up or find ways to play better in the interior of their offensive line. If they don't, this team is not going to be up to those Super Bowl expectations. And then on top of that, you already lost Stephon Diggs for the year. Tank Dell has been a really good find for them. And CJ Stroud has kind of struggled, even though the Ohio State University, I got to say that. He's kind of struggled a little bit during parts of this season. Like I said, the interior of the offensive line, I think, is a big part of that. But I think a lot of that, maybe the high expectations that we had, he still has some developing and growing to do, despite what he did his rookie season. The Colts sitting at 4-5, and it doesn't look like a 4-5 team. I mean, it kind of does, but offensively, no consistency, whether it's been Flacco, whether it's been Richardson. They have no consistency on offense. Defensively, with Buckner being out for some time, they were slow to stop the run, especially early on in the year. They do create some turnovers, and I like that they fly around and play fast defensively. It's just offensively, they cannot get any consistency throughout the course of the season. I think that's hurt them, especially against the Minnesota Vikings, where they just could not do anything consistent on the offensive side of the ball. Jonathan Taylor does make a difference when he's in the lineup, but he's missed games, and I think that has hurt what the Indianapolis Colts' identity is on the offensive side of the ball. The Titans sitting at 2-6. We've learned about them. Will Levis isn't it. They traded DeAndre Hopkins. They let go of Jamal Adams, which I think was a bad pickup to begin with. And Tony Pollard has looked like an addition, but what we learned about this Titans team is that they still have a lot of rebuilding and a lot of growing to do. On top of that, they have a solid offensive line, but the quarterback play has been the biggest issue. Will Levis and those costly turnovers, it's just not been it. And I think Will Levis is not the quarterback that the Titans thought he was going to be coming into the year. And outside of that first half against the Bears, this Titans team does just not look like a very good football team. The Jaguars sitting at 2-7. Doug Peterson on the hot seat. Trevor Lawrence has just not taken that step forward. Defensively, they're still bad. Offensive line, I don't think they're very good. Trevor Etienne is just not the same running back that we thought he was going to be. And offensively, it does set the Christian Kirk broke his collarbone, and they missed Calvin Ridley. This football team is just not growing at all, especially with Trevor Lawrence and his mistakes and his turnovers and his inconsistent play. Defensively, they just did not get any better, and they're sitting at 2-7 for a reason. Just not a very good football team when we're talking about the things that they could potentially do, but they just don't have any consistency on either side of the football, and it's not good. NFC South, we're starting with the division leader, Atlanta Falcons, and one thing that I said coming into the season was that Darnell Mooney was going to be a sneaky free agent pickup for the Atlanta Falcons, and he has been playing some very good football. And I'm not just saying that because he was in a Bears uniform, and I'm saying this because he was mismanaged by the Bears, and once he's better in the offensive system, we've seen what he can do. Kirk Cousins has been playing some really good football. Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier running the football has been very good for them with a very solid offensive line. And defensively, they have been improving under Raheem Morris week after week with Bates, with Jarrett, with a guy like Justin Simmons, who they brought in, AJ Terrell. They have some improvements that they've been doing defensively. And offensively, Kirk Cousins is looking like a very good quarterback in this Atlanta Falcons system. And it does help that they run the football at a consistent level behind a very good offensive line. Kyle Pitts is finally starting to look like a weapon that is utilized in his offense. Even though Drake London got hurt this past week, he's still a very good weapon in his offense. So where the Falcons sit right now, I think they are sitting at a very good spot, sitting at 63 in the NFC South. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, some of their losses have been close, and the one thing that they've been hampered by is injuries to the wide receiver position, whether it's been Mike Evans and Chris Godwin that got hurt in that Baltimore Ravens game late, who's out for the year. McMillan, who missed this game past week. They've been running the football well with Rashad White and shout out to Hillcrest's own Bucky Irvin. They have been running football with the better of the teams in the NFL, and Baker Mayfield has played some really solid football, especially in their win. The thing with this team is they are inconsistent on the defensive side of the ball. The injuries on the offensive side of the ball, the wide receiver position, is starting to hurt this football team as far as trying to spread the ball and push the ball down the field. They did a good job yesterday against a very good team, Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense against the Chiefs, but it's just the inconsistency on the defensive side of the ball has really hurt this football team. And I think they will have a better record the way that this offense has been playing if they had some consistency on the defensive side of the ball. And we're going to talk about two of the worst teams, and I'm putting them both together, is the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints. Both teams have quarterback issues, whether we're talking about Bryce Young and Andy Dalton on one side, and then we're talking about Derek Carr and Spencer Rattler on the other. Both teams are not good defensively, and even though I always said the Saints coming into this year was a rebuilding team, a team that needed to rebuild with the salary cap issues that they have, I think they're starting to see it now with the trading of a Marshawn Lattimore. And the Panthers, they are a team that is very young in a lot of places. I don't know what they were doing with benching Bryce Young. I kind of can see it, but just talking about Bryce Young in year two, he's had another offense coordinator, another offense to learn. I just didn't expect things to hurt right away. Maybe he could have elevated his play or got a little bit better from sitting, but both teams are dumpster fires. Both teams have quarterback issues. Both teams need to rebuild and continue to rebuild their rosters. It's just the Saints have a bigger issue because of the salary cap penalty, and they already fired Dennis Allen. So both teams is just bottom sitting at 2-7, and I don't think it's going to get any better for either team, especially with lack of quarterback play and coaching not being so good, especially on the Saints side. Both teams are just bad right now. Then we're going to get into the AFC West with the defending two-time champions, the undefeated Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes has not played his best football this year. I don't care what the stat sheet said. We can watch the games and see Patrick Mahomes has not played his best football yet. Now, granted, he doesn't have a lot of weapons. Rasheed Rice went out. Hollywood Brown hasn't played it down all year. And they just acquired DeAndre Hopkins. Travis Kelce has just not looked like himself. The offensive line has been kind of hit or miss. Pacheco is down with the injury. They're still undefeated. And you know why? That defense. Steve Spagnuolo in that defense. Chris Jones, Justin Reed on the back end. They've been playing some phenomenal football. And they've been aggressively playing some phenomenal football on the defensive side of the ball. And I think if their defense was not so good, the Chiefs would not be undefeated despite them having Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes does not play his best football, and we have seen that. And we can make a lot of excuses for it. He doesn't have the weapons and all that. He has a running game. Kareem Hunt has been elevated to that running game. Pacheco, once he comes back, I think it's going to add even more to it. It's just this team has been carried, I want to say, by the refs sometimes, and their defense. We had DeAndre Hopkins I think it's going to be a huge addition, and he already has that trust with a guy like Mahomes. I think Hopkins is going to be a big add to that offense, but that defense has been carrying that football team. The Los Angeles Chargers, they're kind of a head scratcher to me because offensively, they have times where they're a bit inconsistent. Quinton Johnson, he has times where they're inconsistent. J.K. Dobbins running the football, Edwards running the football. Then you're going to talk about that defense with Khalil Mack is still playing like a young Khalil Mack. You got a guy like Derwin James who's been a very physical safety, but I'm not sold on what they can do offensively, especially throwing the football with the lack of weapons that they have. But they have been supplementing that with running the football, and their defense has been a solid unit. My thing with this Chargers team is, can they be consistent on either side of the ball? It's just games where offensively they don't do much. It's just games where defensively they just don't look the same. Once I think they can be so consistent, I think we can start to call them a playoff contender. Then we have the Denver Broncos, who I really like what Bo Nix has been doing and how he's been playing with this team. Defensively, they have one of the better units, despite the showing against the Ravens, who I think was just outclassed. And this Broncos team with Sean Payton is still a very young football team. So I didn't expect this Broncos team to be wildly successful. And I think the development with Sean Payton and Bo Nix has been getting better and better throughout the course of the weeks. They've been running the football better with Javonte Williams, who is now healthy. It's just, I think maybe they need to add more to their wide receiver position. But I do like where this Broncos team is at, and I can see this team with adding more talent offensively, being a better unit. The offensive line has been kind of solid. I like where this Broncos team is, and I like the progression that Bo Nix has showed all season. Our last division is the NFC West, and the Arizona Cardinals sit at 5-4, and they have been improving every single week. Kyler Murray has played some good football, but I think offensively have been led by the running game of Connor and Mercado. They have been very physical, especially James Conner. They've been getting better rapport between Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. from The Ohio State University. And that defense doesn't have a ton of names. Buda Baker is the biggest name on their defense, but they have been playing some absolutely good football, especially over the last couple of weeks, getting pressure on the quarterback, bringing blitzes, being very aggressive in that end. And this Cardinals team is, I think they're starting to get better with the running ability of Murray to add to Connor and to add to Mercado. And I think once they start to play a little bit more as far as Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray, I think they will get better as QB wide receiver duo, even though you guys know I've never been the highest on Murray, but they haven't needed him to play superhero, Superman type football. The way they've been running the football and being physical up front with their offensive line. Defensively, I've liked they're continuing to be a better unit these last few weeks under Jonathan Gannon, and I think he's starting to change the culture of the Arizona Cardinals team. Now we're talking about the LA Rams, who sit at 4-4, and they've been dealing with a bunch of injuries, mainly the Cooper Kupp and Nakua, who just got back recently. And we're talking about Matthew Stafford, who's been playing some good football, and Kyron Williams, the running back, who's been running the football well. With Blake Corum is a good 1-2 punch for this running game. Offensive line has been solid. Defensively, I think with Verse and with Bryant and Durant, they're really starting to be a better defensive unit, especially as they start to get more healthy on the offensive side of the ball. And Demarcus Robinson has been playing some really solid football for this Los Angeles Rams offense. So I think once they get healthy on the offensive side of the ball and they can use more of their weapons and spread the football out, I think this team has started to grow a bit more and get better and better. And you have a clutch quarterback who can close games, and a guy like a Matthew Stafford. Then we're going to talk about the San Francisco 49ers, and I think they're one of the biggest head scratchers because they've been dealing with a lot of injuries, whether it's Deebo Samuel, whether it's Christian McCaffrey, whether it's a guy like a Brandon Ayuk who's out now, whether it's Trent Williams been dealing with some nicks and buds, whether it's the defensive side of the ball, Greenlaw, who hasn't played. This team, Hufanga, who's been dealing with injuries. This team has been bit by the injury bug. A guy like Jordan Mason has been dealing with injuries in his own right. So I think the biggest problem for the 49ers is not the talent, is not the scheme, injuries. Injuries have basically killed or just kind of destroyed a bit of what this 49ers team could potentially be. Now, they're still sitting okay at 4-4 in the NFC West that hasn't been necessarily, I want to say they don't have that standout team. So maybe if Brock Purdy can start to play a little bit better with a healthier team, maybe they can start to get themselves back in that playoff contention range and get themselves back in the top of the NFC West. But they have been dealing with a ton of injuries to both sides of the football, and I think that has hurt them more than anything. Even though they can't close games, they've had some leads and they've been letting up late, which attributes to a lot of the history under Kyle Shanahan. So once they start to get some of those guys back and some of those guys healthy, maybe we can see a better 49ers team. And then the Seattle Seahawks. The one thing that has been bothering me about the Seahawks team is they haven't been consistently protecting Geno Smith. Their offensive line has not played very good. Defensive unit, they've been spotty in his own right. Geno Smith play has been kind of spotty, but we can do that to the offensive line. They haven't been able to run the football very well. This Seattle Seahawks team, I've said it in my power ranking videos, is probably one of the more average-looking football teams that we have. Despite some of the talent that they have offensively, it just gets hampered by the offensive line that has not been playing so well, and a defense that has been kind of average at best. When we talk about Woolen, when we talk about Witherspoon, this defense is pretty much average. Offensively, they've been average, and they are the definition of an average football team, in my opinion. That's just here and there. These are my thoughts on every team in the NFL. Leave your team in the comments down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.